After losing the election, Donald Trump began living a quiet and isolated life in his vast mansion in Florida. The voice that once echoed through the corridors of the White House now faded into the hollow silence of empty halls. His former advisors had abandoned him one by one, and the media had lost interest. The man who once dominated headlines with world-shaking decisions now existed as a mere shadow of the past. Every day was a repetition of the last. He would wake up early, take a short walk through his garden, and then lock himself away in his study for hours. Sometimes he listened to recordings of his old speeches. Other times he mindlessly flipped through past campaign posters, reminiscing about rallies filled with roaring crowds. Occasionally, he would try to call some of his old allies, but the responses were either distant or non-existent. The solitude was suffocating, but in some ways, it was all he had left. One evening, as the sky turned crimson with the setting sun, Trump sat alone in his grand yet restless study. A glass of whiskey in hand, he leafed through old documents under the dim glow of the chandelier. Notes, reports, policy drafts, remnants of his time in power. The weight of nostalgia pressed heavily on him. Then, suddenly, the red phone in the corner of the room started ringing. His gaze snapped to the phone. It was a special line, one that had only rung during the most critical moments of his presidency. But he was no longer president. The phone should have been disconnected. Who could possibly be calling him now? He hesitated before picking up. A tense silence filled the line before a deep, weathered voice spoke. "Mr. President." Trump frowned. The voice was unfamiliar, but it carried a weight that demanded attention. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice sharp yet laced with curiosity. The man on the other end exhaled slowly. "My name is not important, but I needed to speak with you." Trump leaned back in his chair. "How did you get this number?" "I once lived by your decisions," the man said, his tone unwavering. "And I lost because of them. Now, as my time runs out, you are the last person I need to speak to." A chill settled in Trump's chest. Was this a threat? A former political rival? A journalist looking for a final quote to seal his downfall? "What do you want?" he asked, his grip tightening on the receiver. The man took a moment before responding. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled slightly, yet remained firm. "My son was a soldier. Because of an order you gave, he was sent to a war he never should have been in. He never came back." Trump's face darkened. His presidency had been marked by numerous military operations, each one weighed carefully, or so he had thought. He had met many grieving families, shaken many hands, given many condolences. But this was different. This wasn't a public statement. This was raw, unfiltered pain. "I know," the man continued. "To you, it was one decision among many, one signature on a stack of documents. But that signature ended my son's life. It ended mine too." Trump remained silent. His mind raced through the countless briefings, the classified reports, the nights spent in the Situation Room. He had made decisions in the name of national security, in the name of strength. But what did that mean to a father who had lost his only son? "Do you know what haunts me the most?" the man asked, his voice now barely above a whisper. "It's his letters. Before he deployed, he wrote to me every week. At first, they were full of excitement. He talked about the honor of serving, about the friendships he had made. But over time, the letters changed. The words became fewer, the tone heavier. His last letter, he said he wasn't sure he'd make it home." A lump formed in Trump's throat. He had read letters like that before. During his presidency, he had met grieving families, had listened to their stories. But this call was different. This wasn't a staged moment for the cameras. There was no prepared speech to give. There was only silence and regret. "I don't expect you to feel what I feel," the man said. "I don't expect an apology, and I don't expect you to care. But I want you to know this. When you signed that order, you took away more than just a soldier. You took away a son. You took away a future. And I just want to know, do you take responsibility for that?" Trump inhaled deeply. The weight of the moment pressed against his chest. The easy response would have been to dismiss the man, to say that war always has casualties, that leaders must make tough decisions. But something about the call, about the rawness of the voice, made him pause. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "If I could go back, there are things I would do differently." A shaky breath escaped the man on the other end. It was neither relief nor forgiveness, but it was something. A truth he needed to hear before the end. "That's all I needed," the man murmured. And then the line went dead. Trump sat there, the receiver still pressed against his ear, lost in thought. The whiskey in his glass remained untouched. The documents before him no longer held any meaning. For the first time in years, he didn't stare at the ceiling in self-assurance. Instead, he stared into his past, and somewhere on the other end of the line, an old man closed his eyes for the last time.